My name is Nadia Zaim, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Westlake North Olmsted chapter of the League of Women Voters of Greater Cleveland. I would like to welcome you to our candidate forum for North Olmsted Board of Education. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. That means that while the League provides nonpartisan candidate information for use by voters, including candidate forums such as this one, the League does not endorse or support a specific candidate or party. This forum is being recorded and will be posted on our Facebook and YouTube pages following the program. While we encourage you to share those links with others who are not able to attend tonight, please note this recording is the property of the League, and no portion of this recording may be reproduced or used without our express written permission. Our moderator this evening is Pam Smith, member of the Lakewood chapter. I will now turn it over to Pam to go over the guidelines and introduce our candidates.
Thank you, Nadia. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm a member of the Lakewood chapter of the League of Women Voters, Cuyahoga County. As Nadia said, this is a nonpartisan effort to educate the voters in North Olmsted about who's running for school board. We don't endorse candidates or any position. This forum is open to the public, and the exciting thing is the public may be watching live tonight, or they may be able to see it versus our recording all the way up until Election Day. Audience questions are encouraged. If you are in the audience, you may submit a question by putting it in the chat. In the chat, those questions will be reviewed by Nadia and another League member and then passed along to me in a way so that I don't ask the same question twice or ideally stumble over any words. The audience will be muted throughout our presentation. We begin tonight with a 2-minute statement from each of the candidates who are running, and that will be followed by the questions and answers. And the forum will complete by having each candidate do a 2-minute closing statement. Do any of you have any questions? Well, then let's begin. The first, the order was submitted by a drawing, and Thomas Herbster will first give his 2-minute opening. Thank you, Mr. Herbster.
First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this. And with that, I've been a member of the North Olmsted Board of Education for 20 years. While on the board, I have served as its president, vice president. I have been its representative to the Polaris Career Center in the following committees: board policy, finance, facilities, legislation, public relations, as well as others. I have also been approved to represent our district at both state and national level events. I have served on the Polaris School Board for the past 9 years, and I have also been the president and vice president, and have also been asked to represent Polaris centers both state and national levels. Twice I've been selected as one of the top 20 school board members in the state of Ohio by the School Boards Association. I remain involved currently, and I am serving as a president of the Horizon Education Center, president-elect of Kiwanis, homecoming chairman. I volunteered in kindergarten classes one morning every week at Birch, Forest, and Spruce. And I will return to that once things calm down and we open up the school districts. I believe that there is nothing more important than our children to learn how to read. And over the past 5 years, I have donated a book to every kindergarten student in our district to take home and read over the summer at the end of the year. As a senior citizen, I can both relate and talk to the senior citizens of our community about our schools. Every child deserves to receive a quality education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Herbster. I think I need to correct myself about the audience questions. They need to be submitted through the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. As candidates are speaking, please feel free to add your questions there. The next opening statement will be from Terry Groden. Mr. Groden?
Thank you and good evening. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, those who are attending our session tonight, and especially my fellow panelists. In my longtime role as the district's legislative liaison, I've often spoken to lawmakers about the importance of local control for K-12 education. That idea is reinforced when you have multiple people willing to serve on the school board. I'm completing my third term on the board and third year as the board's president. I'm running for re-election because I see unfinished business ahead. I'm proud of the new middle school, high school complex, but we still need to address facility needs for grades K through 5. I'm also proud we've been able to stretch funds from the last operating levy over the entirety of my 12 years on the board, despite unfunded and underfunded mandates that compromise those efforts. I look forward to continuing to serve our students, families, and community with my advocacy at the state and federal levels. Efforts that led the Ohio School Boards Association to choose me as one of the top 5 school board members in the state in 2017. This year, OSBA asked me to lead a coalition in the 24th Senate District that brought about historic changes to the state's public school funding model. The goal is to make funding less burdensome to local taxpayers, but that work has just begun. I'm currently in the middle of an appointment to represent public school interests in the 16th U.S. Congressional District too. I believe I can provide experience and consistency to a local leadership team that includes a superintendent in his first year with the district, a treasurer entering her second year, and a board with 2 members who are midway through their first term. Now, I look forward to some spirited conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those of you looking at this recording or live will see 3 candidates on the Zoom, but we actually know that there are 4 candidates running for school board in North Olmsted. Kimberly Rahm could not be with us tonight. She has submitted a statement, which I will read now. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for the opportunity to provide a written statement since I was unable to attend this evening due to a prior commitment. I'm a graduate of North Olmsted Schools, along with my husband, Brian, and we've put 2 children through North Olmsted Schools and currently have 1 attending North Olmsted High School. I'm invested in our students and our schools. I make my decisions on what is best in the best interest for all of North Olmsted students. We continue to have many challenges with the pandemic, and it's my goal to do everything I can to keep all of our students learning in the classroom. I know that based on our treasurer's 5-year forecast, we will have to put an operating levy on the ballot. I will strive to present an issue on the ballot that will provide for much needed upgrades for our primary and intermediate students, as well as providing the funds to continue the education of all of our students. Thank you for your time and attendance. Go Eagles. The next presentation will be Gina Lehman for her 2-minute presentation. Ms. Lehman?
Good evening. I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's forum and to thank all of those who are watching at home. As she said, my name is Gina Lehman. I was born and raised in North Olmsted, as was my husband, Kurt. We are parents to 3 children and chose to raise them in North Olmsted to give them some of the same experiences we were fortunate enough to have when we were growing up. I'm running for school board because I have a passion for education. I have worked in education for a total of 15 years. My first experience started when I became a member of the parent-run board of my daughter's preschool 14 years ago. I then served as the president of that board for 2 years. Following that, I accepted the position of assistant preschool teacher, where I remained for 9 years until the school closed. I then substituted at North Olmsted City Schools in a few different elementary buildings for 2 years before I accepted my current position 4 years ago as an educational aide at Cuyahoga Heights Elementary School. I am passionate about working with students with disabilities, consider myself a fierce advocate for both traditional and non-traditional learners. I believe in the power and the benefits of public education and believe North Olmsted City Schools has many wonderful things to offer, but also has many areas in which they can improve. If I'm elected to this board, I will work with the team to make honest and transparent decisions. We'll work better to unite the community with the schools and take the students' best interest to heart. North Olmsted City Schools has many changes on the horizon, and I will help make those changes as a community member, a parent, a student advocate, and an educator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are ready to begin our question and answers now, but before we begin, I would like to express my thanks to all of you board member candidates who are both sitting on the board and running for the school board. School board members are under many, many different challenges facing our educational system and indeed the health of our students. And it's a tribute to North Olmsted to have each of you running. Thank you for your service. As we begin our questions and answers, we have some questions that have been submitted that are around one of the biggest issues of our day, the COVID-19 pandemic, how it affects our community and the students within North Olmsted. Each candidate, and I will start with Mr. Herbster, and then with each question, I'll start with a different person so that we vary who's first, middle, and last. But starting with Mr. Herbster, just tell us very briefly, do you agree with the mandatory mask mandate that was put in place by the board? You have 1 minute.
Yes, I do. I voted for that. I believe that we need to keep our students and staff and teachers as safe as possible. I will follow the science, and the science at this current juncture says that masking is the best way to reduce the spread of COVID. Our district has had very few cases. Other districts that do not have masking have had, in one case, over 300 kids who were quarantined because of COVID. So I believe that the best policy for our district at this current time is to invoke the mandate of having masks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Groden?
Thank you. I too voted to support mandating masks in school to start the school year this year. You know, there's been a lot of back and forth about just how dangerous COVID-19 is to especially younger children. There's been debate about that. There's been debate about the efficacy of masks. One thing, though, that has never been debated, one thing is abundantly clear, is that children learn better when they are in school, when they are learning in person. And to me, what the decision boiled down to was, by wearing masks, it greatly reduced the possibility that a student would have to be quarantined and removed from school and not have that opportunity to learn in person. And that's why I support it.
Thank you. Ms. Lehman?
I also support wearing masks in the building. I understand that not everybody agrees that there is science behind wearing those masks, and I'm not going to debate the science behind wearing those masks. For every article you can find supporting that masks prevent COVID, you can find one saying that they don't. However, I do agree with Mr. Groden, wearing masks keeps us in school. The district that I worked in started out without masks, and we had 2 full classes completely quarantined by the 3rd week of school. So I have seen firsthand what happens when you try going without masks, and I believe hands down, we all want to be in person and have in-person learning, and the way to do that is to wear masks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Groden, we have a continuation of this question. Because winter is approaching, students will probably not be outside to the extent that they were during the summer and even in September and October. As we approach a winter and students are going to be inside in school buildings, how can the board take action to make sure students are safe?
Well, I think we have very good policies and plans in effect to do that. Of course, we will continue to watch the numbers and follow the recommendations of various health agencies, including, of course, the Ohio Department of Health. We will have the protocols in place to make sure that that there's sanitizing efforts to keep students safe. We will do whatever it takes to keep our students in school, and to do that, to keep them safe. It may mean masking. It may mean a lot of different strategies to do that. But as Mr. Herbster said, I think we need to pay attention to what the numbers are looking like and let that help guide the decisions that we make going forward.
Thank you. Ms. Lehman, do you see any actions that the board can take within schools as winter is here, children are in the schools, for the health and safety versus COVID?
Because our COVID numbers and our quarantine numbers are so low, I believe that we can just keep doing what we're doing now. Because of COVID, I haven't really been in school buildings, but I assume that there's extra hand washing, extra hand sanitizers available, social distancing when it's possible in the classrooms. And I think if we continue that through the winter, along with keeping an eye on numbers, specifically local numbers, that we can continue to keep them safe and healthy and in school.
Thank you. Mr. Herbster, would you have anything to add about safety over the winter in North Olmsted schools?
We've always taken the approach that we want to keep the kids safe. We've done quite a bit of cleaning, not only during the day, but as soon as the kids leave the building, we take care of the sanitizing of the surfaces. I believe that the best thing we can do is to keep an eye on how we're doing numbers wise. And then if there is a problem one way or the other, we can adjust. We can do additional cleaning, or we can even look at the possibility of removing masks. But that's a long ways away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Starting with Ms. Lehman, we have had a question come forward around school nurses in the schools. Do you believe that North Olmsted, for the safety of its children, should have a school nurse in each of the buildings?
Absolutely. I think it's important for each building to have a school nurse and to have a school nurse there for the majority of the school day. When you do have COVID cases come up, there should be a nurse there for contact tracing purposes and to isolate that student before going home, in addition to all the regular reasons why schools need a school nurse.
Thank you. Mr. Herbster, what would be your position on having a school nurse in each building?
We do have school nurses in each building. They're not full-time, but they are there. We also have a lead nurse who monitors everything going on in the entire district, so that if there's a problem in one building, it's known by the district and we can address it. Without having that head nurse, things could get out of hand. So I think we are trying to be the best stewards of funds and to protect our students at the same time.
Thank you. Mr. Groden, would you have anything to add about having a professional nurse in each building?
Yeah, I do believe that should happen. I think there should be a nurse in each building. I think there should be health professionals in each building who can not only address the physical needs of our students, but also the social and emotional needs of our students. The last year and a half has taken a tremendous toll on the social and emotional part of the kids who are being served in our in our schools. And so I think we need both. And that's one of the reasons that I have for many years advocated for proper and adequate funding for our schools at both the state and federal levels, because you have to protect the academic programs when you start to lose funding. But when you start to protect those academic programs, then you have to sacrifice in other areas. And this is not an area that I would like to sacrifice.
Thank you. Beginning with Mr. Herbster, this is a question about the Community Task Force. Their study recommended closing and rebuilding elementary schools. That was submitted some time ago before the COVID and pandemic, but do you still support closing and rebuilding elementary schools?
Yes, I think that at the current time, we have 6 buildings that are open. And if we combine those buildings and brought all the kids together, we could do several things. One would be we would be able to have more teachers at each grade level in that building so that we could level out the classrooms. We're also spending a lot of money on upkeep. These buildings are over 50 years old. When we did the high school, middle school complex, we closed 2 old buildings, and we had large savings by not having to do the maintenance on those buildings that would have had been done on the middle school and the high school. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Groden, what about that study from the task force that's been put on the shelf for a little bit?
Yeah, I think that task force really came up with some good ideas, and alluding a little bit to something Mr. Herbster said, I think we are at a point now where we're not getting a good return on investment of our taxpayer dollars. If we're continuing to put money into upkeep of old buildings, those are funds, again, that have to be taken away from the academic programs. And I don't think that that's a good model to follow. Another thing that Mr. Herbster said that's very important, one of the things that we heard from a lot of parents over the last few years is concerns about growing class sizes. And I think this would give us an opportunity to keep those class size numbers at manageable levels. And I think that this could also have a positive impact for some of the transportation challenges that we're having right now in the district.
Thank you. Ms. Lehman, what's your position on taking some buildings down and rebuilding at the elementary level?
I also believe that we need to close some buildings to level out the class sizes. I know that I am on the very, very east end of North Olmsted, and it wasn't until my girls got a little older and started mingling with those on the west end that I realized the difference in class sizes just between the 2 ends of the district. This was quite a few years ago, but I know that my daughters had upwards of 30 children in their kindergarten class when the kids on the other side of North Olmsted were down towards 18, 19. So I do believe with our student population sort of going down each year that we could fit, we don't need as many buildings as we have now. So if we do choose to renovate the buildings that we have instead of building new, that probably at least 2 of those buildings can close. Or if it's more financially feasible to build new buildings, then maybe we can have a campus or, you know, two separate elementary schools.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to start the next question with Mr. Groden. Mr. Groden, a levy went down in May. It did not succeed. Are you in favor of putting a levy on the ballot in the future? And what would you do differently to ensure its passage?
Well, I'll take the end of that question first. I think we need to do a better job of having conversations with the community and communicating with the community, not to the community, to talk about what our needs are. we do have needs, aside from the facility needs that we just talked about. In my open, I mentioned that we have not passed an operating levy for 12 years. I think we have been tremendous stewards of the public's money over that time, despite resources that have been stripped away from public education. But the fact of the matter is, we're still working under a funding model that says, you have to get those that revenue from somewhere. I do think that we may have an extraordinary opportunity next year to not only address the operational needs of the district, but the facility needs of the district at the same time.
Thank you. Ms. Lehman, would you have some thoughts on the levy that failed and what can be done in the future so that that would not happen?
I also believe that the schools need to have more of a connection with the community and do a better job of getting this information, getting accurate information out to the community. My husband and I attended one of the community conversations, and there was a PowerPoint presented about why we need the levy, how much the levy is for, and it was filled with information, many things that I didn't know. For instance, that a roof on one of our old elementary schools can cost upwards of $1 million. I learned so much from that, and sadly, my husband and I at that particular forum were one of 5 community members there. There were some that were logged in, but it was a very low number. I don't have that in front of me, but I think we need to do a better job of getting accurate information out to the community, including those without children in the district.
Thank you. Mr. Herbster, what comment would you have on having a levy pass successfully in the future?
Unfortunately, in the state of Ohio, we're forced to go out to our communities and ask for money on a regular basis. The funding laws in Ohio have been deemed unconstitutional 3 times, and the state legislation seems not to want to do anything. So that falls down to us, and we need to go out and sell to the public the benefits of what a levy will do, both for the operating side and for the facility side. It doesn't make a lot of sense that if we have a 50-year-old building that we go out and spend $1 million on roofs or boilers on a building that's 50 years old. So I would hope that we would have the opportunity to pass that levy and we can address both the revenue part and the facility part of our needs in this district.
Thank you. Ms. Lehman, starting with you, there's a question about the Ohio Board of Education recently rescinded an anti-racism resolution that was passed last summer. Do you support or oppose that decision?
Thank you. I was not aware that that was rescinded, and I'm not super familiar with what that entailed. So I can't really speak specifically on if I'm for rescinding that or against it, but I do think that anti-racism policies are very important in a diverse community. Again, without knowing what the verbiage was, we need to embrace our diversity, which I think North Olmsted is on the right track to doing that. So again, without knowing, I do think that anti-racism policies worded the right way can be effective in schools.
Thank you. Mr. Herbster, do you have an opinion on that decision by the Ohio Board of Education?
I do not endorse any racism or any discrimination of any type. Over the years when I've been on the board, we have tried to strengthen the rules and the policies that prevent our students from being picked on for whatever matter. And race is one of them, but it's not the only one. We need to eliminate anything that harms our students because of their religion, their sex, or anything else.
Thank you. Mr. Groden?
So, well, I am aware that the that the State Board of Education had a policy and then rescinded it. I really can't speak to the factors that led to the initial resolution, nor the conversation and the back and forth that happened that led the State Board of Education to rescind that resolution. So I'm afraid I can't speak really to the State Board of Education's actions, but I will say that North Olmsted has policies in place to protect students from harmful behavior.
Thank you. Starting with Mr. Herbster, what is your position on the House bills that are in the legislature entitled Prohibit Teaching, Advocating, or Promoting Divisive Concepts? Would passage of such legislation affect North Olmsted school policies and programs? Mr. Herbster?
Any legislation passed affects North Olmsted, whether it's positive or negative. I just got to read the two proposed issues this past weekend, and I believe that if that we need to do whatever we can to eliminate any discrimination against any group or subgroup of students that are in our district. And I believe that those two issues that have addressed an issue that we should not discriminate against our students.
Thank you. Mr. Groden, what's your position on these House bills that are being proposed to prohibit teaching, advocating, or promoting divisive concepts?
I'll try to pack a loaded answer into real quick fashion here. I know the genesis of these bills are tied to some things that I was concerned about, such as a public school employee writing a poem that appeared in a district newsletter talking about how ashamed they were to be white and that we need to do some introspection into how white people are oppressors on a daily basis. I'm concerned when I see public school districts recommending books where the author admits that the thesis of the book, the premise of the book, is that whiteness is a problem we all need to address. I'm concerned when the president of the Ohio School Boards Association is forced to resign simply because he sought clarification about the definition of systemic racism. That's why these bills, I think, came into being, because legislators heard from constituents, as I did, including a parent from North Olmsted who said, please don't teach these kinds of things because my children are growing up in a biracial household and I don't want them to be taught that mom is an oppressor and dad is a victim. There is permissive language in House Bill 327 that allows public school districts to teach controversial topics, divisive issues, but they must do so in an objective manner.
Thank you. Ms. Lehman, do you have a position on House Bill 322 and 327?
I share the same concerns that many of those things affect North Olmsted with our diverse population in all of our schools. I think we need to do whatever we can to protect all of our kids. I think that North Olmsted has a lot of things in place lately. I've noticed the flags at the high school boys, and I'm sure girls soccer game, where there was a flag for each parents of a student and where they had immigrated from. And it was nice to see the students and the parents in front of those flags taking pictures and doing posts. So I think North Olmsted is on the right track, but I also think we need to do everything we can to make our students feel safe, no matter what their race, gender, identity.
Thank you. Mr. Groden, we have a question that's come in, starting with you. How do you feel about vouchers and the distribution of state funding to private and charter schools?
Wow, there's another loaded question. I wish I had more time to talk about. I have, on behalf of the North Olmsted City School District, consistently advocated against the expansion of vouchers. One of the things that we have consistently talked to our legislators about is one of the problems that we have with voucher expansion is that we don't object to a child getting a quality education no matter where that comes from. But what we don't have are ways to conduct an apples to apples comparison for how good a public school district is doing versus how well a private or a charter school is teaching children. They're not measured. The accountability, both on the academic side and the fiscal side, is not the same. And until you can bring some evenness to that, I don't think we should be steering more public dollars to non-public school choices.
Thank you. Ms. Lehman, what would you say if people ask you, what's your opinion of charter schools and public funding?
Well, like Mr. Groden, I also wish that I had more time to expand. It is no secret that I have a third grader who does attend a private school. And when I enrolled him, I was eligible for a voucher because the school that the North Olmsted school that he would be attending is an underperforming school. I choose not to use that voucher. So my opinion is twofold. I did choose to send him to a school that was not underperforming, but at the same time, I choose to save those dollars to put them and keep them in North Olmsted public schools.
Thank you. Mr. Herbster, what about charter schools and public funding?
I have been against vouchers since they came into the state. As Mr. Groden has alluded to, we have a lot of schools that are underperforming that are receiving vouchers. There's no oversight. One of the biggest ones in Ohio went out of business because it was stealing money and estimating the number of students they have. I believe a student should have an opportunity to go to whatever school they want, to be homeschooled. But I think that there needs to be some kind of a measure so that you can say school A and school B, which one is the best for my child, and be able to have a definite apples to apples comparison.
Thank you. Ms. Lehman has clarified that she has a child who she chose to send to a charter school. And the question has come up if either Mr. Groden or Mr. Herbster had children outside of the North Olmsted public school system. So I'd like to ask them that question. Mr. Groden, did your children attend all North Olmsted public schools?
So I have two daughters and one stepdaughter who are adult children now, but all three graduated from North Olmsted. North Olmsted public schools.
Thank you. Mr. Herbster?
I have two children that are grown, one that's in Bowling Green, one that's in Lakewood. They both went to North Olmsted schools and graduated. My wife and I both went to North Olmsted schools and graduated. And my father-in-law was a North Olmsted graduate. So we've always had our kids in public education.
Pam, I just want to clarify too, my son is not at a charter school. I said private, he's actually at St. Brendan's.
Thank you very much for clarifying
Sure.
that. Thank you.
And I do have a senior at North Olmsted. And my daughter, my sophomore, attended North Olmsted City Schools until her sophomore year and is currently at a public school herself.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question goes back to a kind of a wish list of items that the North Olmsted schools may be able to do upon receiving $7 million of emergency funds from the American Rescue Plan. It's been decided and given to schools to meet needs that have arisen from the pandemic. How would you prioritize the use of these funds? And this would be starting with Ms. Lehman.
Yes, I think that $7 million is a lot of money. And I am not a treasurer, nor do I pretend to be. So some ideas, I know that some of that $7 million can be used towards our facilities. And while those are just buildings, they are much more than just buildings, because if we have new buildings, we have smaller class sizes, which in turn benefits the children. I think that we could use upgraded technology, and we also need to touch on our mental health of our students and our staff. I know the question was directed towards students, but as far as our staff, you can't pour from an empty cup. So I think it's important that during this pandemic and even beyond this pandemic, we can use some of that money towards our mental health needs.
Thank you. Tom Herbster, American Rescue Funds, how can they be best spent or better spent, or what would be your wish list for how North Olmsted could make the best use of them?
Well, part of it has to go into the COVID expenditures. We didn't have these expenditures in the past, and so we need to use some of these funds to offset that. But we also need to use some of it to help with the education of our children. And we have put some money into technology. We have had some money that has to go for busing because we have to have the kids further apart. So anything that would help the education of our children, that money is there to use. And by the use of that money, we were able to not have to go to the taxpayers this past November for a levy. It gave us the room to be able to go out into next year, and hopefully we can do a better job of presenting our needs to the public in May or November of next year.
Thank you, Mr. Groden.
I think that money is going to could provide an opportunity for us to address, as I mentioned earlier, some operational and facility needs in the district. What I would not like to see happen, and we need to be very smart with those funds, because that's one-time money. And when that money is gone, it's gone. And I know school districts are struggling all over about what to do with that. And I'm concerned about starting new initiatives or new programs with that money. And then when that money runs out, we have to let those programs go. We have to let those programs die, because we wouldn't have been able to fund them without that stimulus money. So I think perhaps the best use of that money would be to hopefully address some of the real facility issues that we're facing right now, and operational.
Thank you. I have a question now that's really quite different. One of the watchers of this forum has sent in a question saying, Berea City Schools Board of Education sponsors a parent academy to educate stakeholders about the many aspects of the school district, the curriculum, the funding, the safety. Is this something that you might like to see happen within North Olmsted? Starting with Mr. Herbster, what about a parent academy?
I'm not familiar with it. I don't know exactly how it operates, but anytime that we can connect with our parents and the stakeholders in North Olmsted without children in the school is a good thing. I think that if we decided to go that way, that we could contact Berea and see how they set it up. and then modify it so it would work for our city. But anytime that you can have interaction between the schools and the general public can only be a good thing.
Thank you. Mr. Groden, are you familiar with the Parent Academy?
I'm really not, but it's a very intriguing idea. I think it's something that I would be willing to take a look at. I will say that during my entire time as a school board member in North Olmsted, I've been a firm believer in professional development for school board members. And so every year, at least once a year, I'm attending seminars or workshops. Many years I've attended multiple seminars and workshops to learn about what other school districts are doing in Ohio that's having a positive impact on the students, on the families, and the community. So this would be another example of ways that I think we might be able to learn from a neighbor district about how we can improve our school district. And if this is not a session at the Capitol Conference, which is held every year in Columbus for school board members, maybe it should be.
Thank you. Ms. Lehman, how about communication to parents?
I think, again, I don't know about that program specifically, but I think it sounds wonderful. As a community member and as I've been out campaigning and talking to the community, I'm finding that there really is a disconnect between a lot of the community members and the school. And I don't think that COVID helped that. I think that they've sort of come farther apart since COVID. So I would change maybe the title of that group and change the way the group works to not just parents, but community, so that we can include those that don't have children in our district, so that they could still be invested in our school and learn more about our schools and why we need these buildings. But I think it sounds like a wonderful idea.
Thank you. We're running towards the end of our Q&A, but a question has come up that we have time to take before we go on to the closing statements. And having been an elected official myself, I know what it's like when your friends say to you, I don't know why you want to do that. It uses up all your time, and you're always in trouble with people and talking to people who give you a negative impact. So I think people would be interested in knowing, starting with Mr. Groden, what kind of satisfaction do you get or think you'll get in the future from being on the school board?
Well, that's a great question. And I think often, because I'm at the State House a lot in Columbus, about a plaque that hangs in the basement of the State House. It's a quote from Aristotle, and it says, "All who have meditated on the art of governing mankind have been convinced that the fate of empires depends on the education of our youth." And I have always tried to find ways that I can give back to the community. I like to be able to, I would like to be able to think that I can, in some small measure, provide something that will have a legacy on not only this generation, but future generations. So I do it because I want to look back and think that I did something valuable with my life.
Thank you. Ms. Lehman, what convinced you, and why do you desire to be on the school board?
Since the school boards have all of a sudden been thrust into the news, I mean, even more since I decided to run, I'm asked that question a lot. Why would you want to do this? Do you not watch the news? And I do. And I think that it's important work. Education means everything. And I have just such a passion. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy working in a school building. I go to work every day, and I've told my friends and family, I will always, until I retire, work in a school. I love the school environment. I'm passionate about advocating not just for my own kids, but others as well. And I'm trying to find a positive place to put that. And if I can be on a team and help make decisions that to make our schools better, I believe in our schools. And if I just would be honored to be on a team that can make decisions about North Olmsted's future going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Herbster, if people asked you why you're spending these nights and days with school board issues, what do you say?
I get a lot of satisfaction out of seeing the results from our schools. When our kids go on to college and they don't have to have the remediation that they do in some of the other schools. I have been a volunteer, as I said in the beginning, in the kindergarten. And when you look into a kid's eyes and you see the moment that they get the concept that you're looking to teach them, there's no greater satisfaction than that. Our board is made up of, and hopefully will continue to be made up of, both people with kids in the district and with kids outside. I don't have any kids in the system now. So when I make a decision, it's basically based on just what is best for the education of the student.
Thank you. We have had a great variety of questions asked tonight. Easy ones, hard ones, thoughtful ones, and I would like to thank all of these candidates for their thoughtful answers. We are now ready to have our closing statements of 2 minutes each, and we will go in reverse order from the way we started with the opening. So Ms. Lehman will go, and then Mr. Groden, and then Mr. Herbster. Ms. Lehman, your 2-minute closing statement. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you again to the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight. And thank you to those who are watching for your thoughtful questions. I've enjoyed being able to tell you about myself and my opinions. And as I said in my opening, my interest in the school board comes from my passion for education. I believe in the public school system, and I believe that North Olmsted City Schools can benefit from the crossroads that they are currently at. Newly renovated buildings and classrooms will attract new families and encourage current families to stay in our district. As a parent and a lifelong member of the community, I think my fresh perspective would be beneficial when making decisions to lead North Olmsted City Schools into the future. It would be an honor and a privilege to serve on this board.
Thank you. Mr. Groden?
I also want to thank everyone again who was involved with tonight's discussion, especially the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. My father was an educator, and I saw the positive impact he had on people's lives. I am not a teacher, but I saw service on the school board as a way to help children in some small way realize their dreams and potential. And their success is our success as a community, a state, and a country. During my time on the board, we have consistently graduated over 90% of our students after 4 years of high school. Nearly $90 million in scholarships and grants have been awarded to our graduates during the last 12 years. Of course, I can't take credit for their accomplishments. However, we as school board members can and do put people and systems in place that lead to such success. If reelected, I pledge to continue my efforts at helping to create the best possible learning environment for our students. I also pledge to continue fighting for our families and community members at the State House in Columbus and in Washington, D.C., the kind of representation that led our state representative to call me one day while heading to a floor vote on a piece of legislation. He asked me about North Olmsted's position on the bill and then voted in a manner to protect our best interests. And that is what I will do. I will always vote in a manner that protects the best interests of our children first, and by extension, our families and our community. Thank you again.
Thank you. Mr. Herbster?
I also would like to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this on tonight. I have served and represented the citizens of North Olmsted for over 20 years, and I have a a wealth of knowledge on what has worked and what has not worked. I've been able to work with, I would imagine, probably 15 different board members over those 20 years. And we've always got along. We've never always agreed, but we've always come to a conclusion that was the best for the kids in North Olmsted. I believe that the schools are the main heart of our community. And that's what draws people to North Olmsted. It's not our parks, it's not our restaurants, it's not anything that's physically part of North Olmsted. It's the schools. We have great schools. We've had great school time, and it's important that the schools in North Olmsted stay strong. And I vow to continue my work to make sure that every child has the opportunity to learn. Every child should have an opportunity to know how to read and write. And that is our duty, is to make sure that the kids in North Olmsted are the ones that benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. I'd now like to remind everyone listening that your vote counts. Your vote counts in your city council races and your school board races. It's a direct correlation to the quality of life in your community. The general election will take place on Tuesday, November 2nd, but you can still order a mail-in ballot. Applications are at the library. You can go downtown to Cuyahoga County's Board of Elections and vote in person right now if you know that you're going to be out of town on November 2nd. Please remember, your vote always counts and is very, very important. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. Thank you to all of our candidates for participating in this forum tonight. And thank you to all those who attended and asked such great questions. We would also like to give a special thanks to all of the teachers and school staff and administrators who have continued to serve their students to the best of their ability, despite all of the challenges they have faced over the past year and a half. As Pam mentioned, you can actually start voting right now, either by mail or by going to the Board of Elections. And for personalized voting information, you can visit our nonpartisan election website, vote411.org, where you can see what's on your ballot, find your polling location, and also research the pros and cons of any issues that are on your ballot. As a reminder, this forum was recorded and it will be posted on our Facebook and YouTube pages. I did post those links in the chat, so please share those links with your neighbors and friends who are not able to attend tonight. You will also be able to see all of our previous forums on our YouTube page. That includes our candidate forums for City Council, for Mayor and City Council President. Thank you again, everyone, for attending. Have a good night.